Hey guys, Tammy here. And in this video, we're going to talk about why doesn't your attorney respond? This is something I hear from coaching clients a lot. And sometimes it's not even the fact that they're unhappy with their attorney. They think they have a great attorney. They love the performance in court, but man, they just have the hardest time getting answers to questions in between court hearings. Now, let me quickly remind you that if you like these videos, please hit like and also subscribe to the channel so you get notified when new videos are released. So I'm going to give you my top 2 or 3 things that I see that causes this problem of why you don't get a response from your attorney. First, you have to start with, is the attorney really the person you need to talk to? A lot of times when you have an attorney that is just one of those people that loves court, loves litigating, loves being in the courtroom, guess what? Their calendar is usually jam-packed with those court appearances. And we have one attorney in particular that comes to mind for me here in San Diego that this is exactly how he is. He just loves being in the courtroom and he's constantly booked. And so it's really, really hard. And he uses the support people around him to deal with all of those lower level tasks. And so you may not necessarily need to speak to the attorney specifically. You may be able to talk to the paralegal or somebody else, but you've got in your mind that it has to be the attorney. Or if you're emailing the attorney and you're not copying their assistant or their paralegal so that that person can make sure that you're getting a response, that could be part of your issue too. And I do see that a lot from clients. So first of all is understanding how your attorney works in their practice, and also what type of communication do they prefer? Do they prefer that you send an email? That's one of the questions to ask them, especially in your initial interview, is how do you most commonly communicate with clients? How would you prefer that I communicate with you? Is it via text? Is it via email? Is it through your assistant? Everybody's got their own way. And I think if they're a little bit more old school, they tend to like it if it goes through their assistant because that's what they've typically been used to in the past before we were managing everything through all these electronic means. This next thing that I will tell you is sometimes the fact is that they have so many cases going on. And honestly, people are floored when I tell them how many cases that attorneys usually handle. In a small solo practice like me and Thomas, where it was just the two of us, we typically had 30 to 50 cases. And I know that seems like a really high number, and we tried to keep it towards the lower end of that so that we weren't crazy. But also, it impacts your ability to earn, right? The more cases you have, the more money you're making. And so it kind of becomes this trade-off. And law is not that easy a mechanism by which to make boatloads of money. I know people tend to think about attorneys and think, oh, they make tons of money. Well, it's because most of them work 60 plus hours a week. I'm sure in your job, if I gave you 60 plus hours a week, you'd be making a heck of a lot more money than you're making, but you'd probably have not much of a life. And that's kind of what happens. And so, but typically, even towards the lower end of like 30, that's still a lot of cases. And so that's a lot of facts. That means we're talking to a lot of people. Of those 30 people that are current cases, imagine how many people we talked to that didn't retain Thomas, didn't sign up for services or whatever. And so you talk to so many people, there's so many fact patterns in your head that it starts to get a little difficult to keep everybody straight. And so one of the things that I advise people to do sometimes is call your attorney's assistant and say, I would like to get on their calendar. It won't take long, a 30-minute call. I have a few questions, and have your questions written down and save them up. Don't feel like every time a question pops in your head, you've got to run over and pick up the phone and call your attorney, because that's the most expensive way to use your attorney. So try to keep the questions on a list unless it's urgent, and then set a call. Why is it good to set a call? Because then what happens is, for the attorney, they go, oh, look, I've got a call with Mrs. Smith at noon. Okay, I need to pull out Mrs. Smith's file around 11:30. and look through her documents and refresh my memory as to what the issues are in this case, so that when I talk to Mrs. Smith, I'll be able to answer her questions. Otherwise, a lot of times what happens is you happen to get the attorney on the phone on the fly, and they can't even answer your questions because they don't remember. They haven't looked at the file in a while. They're a little bit cold on it, and they don't remember the details, and they need a chance to look at the file. The next thing that happens sometimes is people will email, but they'll email this very complex question. So when you're trying to manage your email and you're going through it, how many of you like take the really quick and easy things and you try to get them off your plate, right? So if I got a client that says, can you give me the date and time of the court hearing next week? Sure, no problem. Blah, 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 blah. But if I have a client that emails and says, can you tell me what to expect at the hearing next week, what the date and time is, when should I arrive, how early should I arrive, is there any additional information you need from me, what types of things is the court going to ask, how long do we expect the hearing to take, what are Thomas's main arguments going to be at the hearing, do I need to be concerned because my child is saying this, should I bring this up at the hearing? And it just starts getting into all these things where your head starts to spin and you're like, okay, I'm going to have to come back to this because this is just too much. And then you don't get that response right away. Again, there's sort of a balance there where I think if you're sending one email for every question or you're making one call for every question, either way, that's not good because you're burning through your attorney's fees and you're using up a lot of time. So you want to try to put them together as much as you can, but you don't want to make them so large and so overwhelming that then it delays the attorney's ability to respond to you because they got to go back to the file and look up all this information, figure out, maybe they don't even, maybe they haven't looked at what their arguments are for next week yet, and they don't even know, so they don't even know how to answer that question yet if your hearing is a long way away. And I know that for us, a week might seem like, well, that's just next week. You should have your ducks in a row. Your attorney might have a hearing on a different case every single day between now and then. And so this is why clients tend to get frustrated because they feel like their hearing is coming up. Oh my goodness, it's only 5 days. But for the attorney, they're going, oh my goodness, I got 4 more hearings before I even get to that one. It tends to just be that kind of fire drill for the attorney where they're constantly putting out the next fire. And, I talked about 30 to 50 cases being kind of average for a solo. Well, if you're in a large firm with multiple attorneys, let's say, 3 or more, 5 or more, something like that, those attorneys often will carry 80 to 100 cases apiece because they have associate attorneys, paralegals, sometimes they'll have a senior paralegal, a junior paralegal. They have multiple people that are handling chunks of the cases. And so the volume they're handling is higher, which is fine. They're capable of handling that with that volume. But guess what kind of gets lost sometimes is, again, that many fact patterns. And so you're going to have to give them time to be able to go back and look at the file and figure things out. You can even look at it as it's not always so much, especially in the large firms, about money. Sometimes people are like, oh, well, this attorney just filed this because of money. They were super aggressive and they filed it because of money. And in the first instance, yes, that can be true sometimes, but it's not as directly as we think it is. In smaller firms, I would say sometimes that is an issue because that solo practitioner has to survive and pay their bills and all that kind of thing. And one of the things that we were very specific with in our practice is we kept Thomas divorced from any knowledge about the customer's finances as much as we possibly could so that didn't impact how he handled the case. So he didn't even have to worry about consciously trying to put that out of his mind. But in larger firms, obviously that attorney's getting paid either way. And so we tend to think, oh, well, it doesn't have anything to do with the money. If they're recommending that I do this, then then they're not directly benefiting from that because they're on a salary and they're getting paid either way. But here's what they do have to do. They do have to meet their certain amount of billable hours for the year. When Thomas worked for a firm, his requirement was 1,200 billable hours a year. Now, there's administrative tasks and different things that go on in between, and you can't possibly bill 40 hours a week. That's unless you're working 80. An attorney cannot bill 40 hours a week unless he's working close to 80. This tends to be an issue where, oh, I've got to meet my billable hours more than it is just about the money. And so I think sometimes, clients in certain situations can be led down that path if I am in a position where I need a new case or I need new billable hours or whatever. Now, I will say I don't think that's the vast majority of attorneys, but I think you have to be careful because I think it's like any other profession. There are honest people and dishonest people in every walk of life. And so it's a good thing to make yourself aware of and kind of know if you feel like you're a number and you're just being pushed through and this person really doesn't, even know your name when you call, then that's probably an issue. I wouldn't expect them to remember, every fact pattern in your case, but I would expect them to remember some of the basics of your name, how many kids you have, their rough ages, that kind of thing. So it's just something to make you aware of, how this happens for the attorneys. And when you're not getting answers, why, what's going on in their world. And it's usually that either they're super, super busy. That's like point A, probably 99% of the time, they're just super, super busy. They have all these billable hours, all these cases, and they're running case to case to case. But B, it can also be that you're communicating through the wrong mechanism. You're not copying the right people, or you're sending your communication in such a way that makes it difficult for them to answer you. You want to make it as easy for your attorney as you possibly can. That's how you get the quickest response. That's how you get the best results. And frankly, that's how you save the most money. So I hope that's helpful to you. If you'd like to learn more about my coaching services, please go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There's a link on there where you can book a free strategy session with me. I'd love to brainstorm with you, help you leverage your attorney, and help you be able to save a bundle on attorney's fees. I'll see you all in the next video.
We'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands.